Are we ready to begin, Susan? Great. Sorry for the slight delay.
We do have Manuel not here yet, but everybody else is here. So yes, we can.
Okay, well, my job here is to give a preamble, a kind of introduction to the awards programs that IVSA has created and currently administers. And then I'm going to turn it over to Susan Hansen for the presentation of the awards. Susan being very heavily involved in the work of the committee that has evaluated the awards for the Rieger and Prosser programs, and also is our incoming vice president. So without further ado, so we have a few awards programs that I want to tell you about. The John Rieger Awards Program was created in 2012 to recognize outstanding graduate student work in visual sociology. Because outstanding visual sociological work can emerge through different disciplines and different degree programs, the Rieger Award nominations are coming from many disciplines, not just sociology, and also for graduate students of many different levels, MA, PhD, and everything within those two and beyond. And they are in fields like anthropology, design, art, education, ethnic or gender studies, and so on. Generally speaking, we make two Rieger awards each year, one for an outstanding master's thesis or a doctoral dissertation, and then a second one for an outstanding paper or project. An example would be an image-rich documentary or an online gallery or blog, a visual community history, some kind of social action initiative. However, in some exceptional years, we actually can make 3 awards, and this is one of those years. And I just want to give a big expression of gratitude in absentia to the Rieger estate. John Rieger passed away, as most of us know, and the endowment continues, and we have really just been so fortunate to work with John's estate and with the endowment administrators to continue this program, which delights them to no end. I want to tell you that the Rieger family is very happy that we're doing this, and they're so pleased at the awards we've made over the years. So that's great. The Rieger Award winners receive a certificate and a cash prize of $1,000 and an invitation to publish their work on our website. And then in years when we're traveling, they get a travel stipend as well to attend and present at the conference. So that's the Rieger program. The Prosser Awards program was established in 2015, and it recognizes outstanding work by beginning scholars, early career scholars in visual methodologies, particularly. Outstanding work in visual methodology obviously can emerge also from a wide variety of disciplines and practices within disciplines, and within methodological arenas. And these are nominations that we're receiving, again, not just from sociology or even the social sciences, but also from the humanities, the arts, design, education, other fields, and also from professional practice fields. And similarly, similar to the Rieger, or identical to the Rieger, there are cash prizes of $1,000 and travel stipends, certificates, and the invitation to publish through the IVSA website. Finally, we have new awards programs for this year, established in 2021, and they emerge from our discussions and our conversations and our debates within the IVSA board and within our general membership around systemic racial violence, government-sanctioned and systemic racial violence. And on this particular note, you may know that we published a position statement, which I am going to put in chat for those who haven't seen it. However, statements are just that, they're statements. And usually, too often, I think, nothing more than that. And so we have met and vigorously debated and discussed within the organization what we can do that's beyond making statements. And so we've identified ways to use our resources that in unprecedented ways for the organization to actually acknowledge work that's being done to resist, combat, undermine colonialism and racism. And so, all right. We have. Okay, that's Frisina again. Sorry. So we have these awards programs, the Anticolonialism and Antiracism Awards Program established this year to recognize outstanding anti-colonial and anti-racist work by researchers and activists who use visual methodologies or advance visual activism through their work. So work nominated for these awards has to be visually significant. It must embody ethical principles and reflect anti-exploitative practices. Nominated work can include accounts and documents of activism by others, but must also document the critical engagement of the nominees themselves and a commitment to anti-colonialist and anti-racist activism that goes beyond work duties and beyond personal career advancement. There are two awards in this program, the award for progressive advocacy, right, and the award for visual activism. So those are the awards programs, and those are some of the ways in which we are using our resources to acknowledge and promote outstanding work in visual sociology. And with that, I believe I'm going to turn it over to Susan. And Susan, I will monitor mutes as best I can.
Thank you, Greg. What a nice presidential introduction. Okay, so first of all, I would like to thank everybody who nominated someone or who nominated themselves to be considered for the awards. There was a really high quality of work all round, and it was an absolute joy to read every single application, and it's always very difficult making these evaluations. So yeah, thank you for letting us read your work. It is the best committee to be on the board. Thank you also to the incredible John Wagner, who oversees and coordinates the awards programs, and without which this would never run on time. Thank you, John. And thank you to the IVSA Awards Committee and the Anti-Colonial Anti-Racism Committee, who were involved in evaluating the awards. So thanks to Mariko Smith, Hang Sung Kim, Alex Tillman, Tara Milbrandt, and Yolanda Hernandez Albuja. Okay, so on to the exciting part. Right, so the PROSA Award winner 2021, we are delighted to announce, is Manuel Ortiz Escámez. Manuel is founder and director of the Multimedia Laboratory for Social Research at the National Autonomous University of Mexico. His recent books, Sociology, Documentary Photography, and Video as Instruments for the Construction and Dissemination of Knowledges in Social Sciences, and Sociology with Audiovisual Media, both enhance the theory and practice of visual methodologies and contribute valuable insights into participatory approaches, visual representation, and analysis. The committee was impressed by Manuel's extraordinary range of work in multiple contexts, as a photojournalist and through teaching, collaboration, and program development. He brings a clearly sociological imagination to his journalistic writings and photography, using both photographs and words to connect individual lives, struggles, stories, and experiences to broad and historically significant social structural issues. Congratulations, Manuel. I wish we could all clap now, but it would be great if you could tell us a little bit more about your work. You're on mute, I think, Manuel.
I fear he's not on mute, actually. There just is a microphone problem, Manuel.
Okay, so at the bottom left-hand corner of your screen, next to the green mic, there's a little arrow where you can pick your audio input. No, we can't hear you. That's a shame. Congratulations, Manuel. Do you have a microphone, a little green microphone at the corner? Yeah, the arrow next to the mic, Brock. You can select your audio input there if you look in the chat. Okay.
And
so
sometimes I would also maybe suggest that you check, if you go to the Zoom menu, you can check to see if updates are necessary to install.
Okay,
this
so I
only
think
happens to me.
I think we might pass on to the next speaker, and perhaps if Brock, you could communicate with Manuel and see if we can get him some sound. Yeah. Okay, Manuel, we're gonna return to you in a minute and carry on, and hopefully we'll be able to hear from Manuel towards the end. Okay, so that's the Prosser Award winner for 2021. As Greg was saying, the Rieger Awards, we usually have 2 award categories, and sometimes we're able to offer a 3rd award due to the generosity of the Rieger estate if there are candidates who score very highly and we just can't make a decision. So this is one of those years, which is wonderful. This year, we have 2 Rieger dissertation/thesis awards to give. The first goes to Camilo Leon-Quijano from EHESS in France. Camilo's doctoral dissertation engages a critical reflection on what he calls an imaged community in a French marginalized city. Through a lengthy and immersive visual ethnography, Camilo's research shows the power of visual practices in the social and cultural definition of urban phenomena. His work provides a thoughtful, engaged, and sophisticated explication of method, perspective, and the pragmatics of photographic ethnography, and the committee thought that Camilo surpassed the normal limitations and expectations for a dissertation by examining in exquisite detail the multiple contexts in which people's stories are created and recreated, viewed, listened to, and understood by the researcher/photographer, the participants, the community, and the larger world. Congratulations, Camilo.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Susan. Thank you, all the board members, for this great recognition. I will try to share my screen so you can. I will just put my presentation and I will share my screen. Can you see it, the presentation? Great. Well, hello everybody. My name is Camilo Leon-Quijano. So I'm a visual sociologist and a photographer, born in Colombia and based in France. As I said, I would like to thank the members of the board for according me this award. I'm very, very honored to receive this from an institution that I have admired since the beginning of my young career. So I will briefly present the main questions and conclusion of my dissertation, and also to show you some pictures that I made. So my research explores the social lives of pictures in Sarcelles, that is a 60,000 people town located in the north of Paris, a marginalized and impoverished suburb that has one of the first and most imposing social housing complexes in France. And since its birth in the 50s, Sarcelles has been largely depicted in media, film, and photographic productions as a fantasized city. And one of the symbols of this urban mythology is the Sarcellite, that is a neologism created to define a supposed pathology, which would suffer the inhabitants of the social housing complex in these popular outskirts of the main metropolis. And in this research, I propose to understand the visual practices that shape the image of Sarcelles by doing a photoethnography that is phenomenological, sensory, participatory, and creative. So for more than 3 years, I observed, I participated, and I photographed the city. And the main object was to understand the social life of pictures in this urban environment through what I call an imaged community, communauté imagée. And this concept allowed me to explore from the inside the visual ecology of photographic practices, both from a pragmatic and a phenomenological point of view. I was interested to understand how pictures that we produce in the field were seen, experienced, performed, and reused by the local people. And I wanted to know how the image of Sarcelles was defined not only by the external media and institutional structures, but also through the daily activities of the local citizens. So the main question that guided this research was, how is the image of a French marginalized city constructed through the experience and the visual practices of its inhabitants, but also of the researcher? And to answer this question, I conducted ethnographic fieldwork between January 2015 and October 2018. And I structured my work in 5 parts. So the first one explored the history and the visual economy of photographic materials in Sarcelles, mainly through photo books and existing photographic materials on Sarcelles. The second one analyzed the ecology of visual interactions on a local scale, based on a series of civic resistances which took place in digital spaces, especially in social network, where the locals visually perform and challenge the hegemonic image of marginalization of Sarcelles. The third explored the relationship between spatial experience and photography based on an immersive, sensory, and non-representational activity. So between 2015 and 2018, I made more than 11,500 edited photographs. And over those years, I followed the local activities of people in the city. In particular, I follow a local family, the Benz-Gevray family, for 2 years. And photography was a means to understand the sensorial relationship to space and to urban practices. This long-term and immersive photographic activity gave me the possibility to explore the inner and intimate moments of the citizens' lives in this environment. And I also photograph local events and ordinary activities that are not usually depicted in large media, such as the community gardens. And the idea was to challenge the hegemonic image of the banlieue through these engaged visual practices. And for this, I also made participatory activities. So the fourth chapter of my dissertation explores the city through photo voice activities that I made with a feminist association and also with children from a local school that participate in my research. And the idea was to explore the city through creative objects made with the Sarcellois. The last chapter of my dissertation explores the Rugby Women. It's a series that I made in 2017 with a group of young sportswomen from a local high school. And I followed them on their daily activities for over a year. And I explore how, through an aesthetically engaged photographic activity, I could challenge the race, gender, and class representational structures that define the image of the Sarcellois in the public scene. Photography was a means to question the representation of women's bodies and to rethink the narrative structure of photographic ethnographies. And so I decided to mediatize this photographic series. And by doing so, I explored the social construction of Sarcelles and the image of the people of Sarcelles in the photojournalistic field based on a visual and media definition of the image community in this professional environment. So this activity allowed me to explore the different degrees of publicization of the photographic narratives and analyze also the reactions and the discursive structures that define the image community in those external spaces. Finally, I analyze also the materiality of the photographic feedback, a part very important of my work. In particular, I explored the reception of a photo sound slideshow that I created, and I also diffused it in the media, and of a giant exhibition that we made with the rugby women in their high school. And well, that's like in 6 minutes and 10 seconds presentation of my research. To conclude, I would like to thank you again for this great recognition. I'm very, very happy. I hope next time I will be able to meet you in person, and I will be very happy to participate in the forthcoming activities of the IVSA. So again, thank you very much. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you so much, Camilo. That was a jam-packed 6 minutes. I can't believe you got through all of that work in such a short time. Okay, so on to our second Rieger dissertation/thesis award. This goes to Tess Baxter from Lancaster University in the UK. Where is Tess? I can't see her on the screen. I think Greg's going to spotlight her. Okay, so Tess's practice-based doctorate, Falling Between Worlds, demonstrates how text and visuals can be combined to inform research. Her work has diverse forms of expression, a written dissertation that contains visuals, and a practice of video art that contains text. Her research area is creative communities and online spaces, specifically the virtual world of Second Life. The committee thought that Tess's work was exceptionally creative, nuanced, and thoughtful in rethinking the many simplistic dualities that characterize contemporary discourse, both academic and popular, digital versus analog, virtual versus real, global versus local, etc. We thought that she paid admirable attention to digital living spaces, mediated social interaction, and so on. And we were also impressed by her research practice orientation as an alternative to the deductive formation of research questions. And we're also liked very much that her approach to inquiry was framed by questions of social justice and not just the theoretical frameworks of other researchers. So, congratulations, Tess.
Right, thank you very much. Yeah, do I need to say any more? I'd like to thank you for the award, obviously. It's a big thing for me because I'll get to that bit as I go through what I've prepared to say. I started the PhD by saying that there is an entrance and an exit and a woven carpet in between. And that really is, to me, what a PhD is. It's not a discrete unit as such. It's about what I entered and what I came out of. I've always included video art in my presentations, and I couldn't quite think what to do, except that I realized that in the spirit of the woven carpet, I've been finishing off a book I never quite managed to complete, which is Canterbury Tales, and it's some of the theories around it. So I'm going to play a bit of the, if I share screen, the Digital Pilgrims video art that I did. So the question here is, who are the characters? This is the question that's asked of Chaucer. Did he know them? Did he do sketches of those he saw around him? Did he do deeper social observation? What is the relative value of the host to Chaucer? And so this video art engages Chaucer with digital space, of thinking through by exploration. It's not all directly productive, but produces ideas which then inform what else comes along. And it's about connecting images and language across time. So here I am at the very beginning. I am the host. That description is me, very much so, but not directly. So I entered this with a degree in sociology with independent studies, and I did the independent studies in order to incorporate film and photography, to cross things over. And that's what I really value about sociology, is the way that it allows you to do this, to establish new ways of seeing, of analysis. And I've always seen authors and directors as close observers of life. Alan Bennett wrote the obituary for Irving Goffman in the London Standard. And that really, to me, says it all. An author and a sociologist together, admittedly in death, but in the George Kittredge in Canterbury Tales says, the Canterbury Tales frames a collection of work. It's not just one book. And that is what I tried to achieve in terms of the PhD, was about, there's a lot of framed work. There's the PhD document, which I didn't have to print, but I've got a life in print. So I was going to do it, and I was going to do it as a book rather than the formalities of a PhD. This is my exhibition, which was going to be a white wall gallery, but became isolated in a box. So this is a lot of the artwork that I produced as print work. So it's a different format responding to the time. And then there's another book, which is of the video art itself. Yeah. So this has got page after page of it. So this is about the collection of work that contributed to being the PhD, rather than just having one. Now, one of the things that came along was that I went on to do masters, and again, it was multidisciplinary, and it would allow me to connect back with sociology, but it was in an English department, and I discovered literary studies, where you have close reading as a method. You have relatively few references to put in it. You've got the 3 books you use, plus a few people talking about it. It's an antidote to the literature review. It's condensed thinking. It's about knowledge, and it's about analysis. And I think those are the things that in the days of algorithms, we're starting to lose on the internet, where you can produce these great downloads of everything that everybody has ever written about something, Whereas what matters is actually the bits that you choose to put together and to justify that. And I feel that's what I've really tried to do within the PhD. But the other thing that's, well, I actually went within, having said that, I went to do the PhD with a sociological proposal, but it was picked up by somebody in contemporary art, Professor Charlie Geer, who then linked me to Jen Southern, who is another lecturer, and she went from art to sociology. I'd gone from sociology to art. So there's this coming together. I never expected literary studies to be a part of the PhD, but I started to progress with it. I realized that mediation, in my view, is too deterministic about technology. Literary studies and translation is about human communication and about how we translate things. And translation is never perfect. And you can never quite translate things in the same way. And I transferred this into the PhD in terms of art form. And so you've got the audio, you've got music, you've got visuals, and they're all different languages. And in particular, musicians talk about this in terms of synesthesia, that music is about color for them, and they compose music in terms of color. And for me, when I'm trying to select music to go alongside the video, it's very much that kind of feel of it. I can't do it literally. It's not science, it's not really research, it's what it feels like. And if it feels right, then I can justify it. And so that's the process. And that is what became the original research contribution. In turn, that, by the way, just shout if I'm going over time, that connects with Pierre Levy, which is not, we're not talking about between the virtual and the real, but between, as if the virtual is unreal, but between the virtual and the actual. We virtualize in our imagination and we actualize things before thinking it back into the virtual to turn it, actualize it into more forms. And really that was the basis of the PhD, that parallels translation and fluency of reading in one language, virtualizing in the mind to speak in another.
Thank
So
you, Tess.
I'm happy to leave it there unless you'd like me to talk a little longer.
Well, I wish you all had an hour each, but unfortunately we didn't schedule quite enough time, Tess. But we'll catch you in the break and we can talk more.
Okay.
Thank you so much for telling us about your work.
I'll just put some links up in chat.
That's a great plan. I'm sure, yeah, people also continue conversations in chat. Okay, so the next award winner is the winner of the 2021 Rieger Project Award. The winner of the 2021 Rieger Project Award is Menatula Hendaway from TU Berlin and Ain Shams University in Cairo. Menatula's study on visual communication of Cairo street billboards contributes to actor network theory, the field of urban planning practice, and the theory and practice of visual methodologies. Her project also develops participatory approaches and visual representation and analysis, and enhances our understanding of Egyptian culture and social life. The committee thought that Menatula's work clearly shows the gap between urban vision and urban challenges. She gives us a deep critical analysis of how the liberal capitalist international system leans on visions, images, and communication tools to assert its power through architecture plans, which leave aside a large part of the population, one that is ordinarily voiceless and invisible. Well done, Menatula. Would you like to tell us?
Thank you, Susan. Yes, thank you so much, and thanks to the board. I'm very happy with the awards, especially that I'm now approaching the time to present my project and my dissertation. I'm going to share my screen. So I was very much first interested in the imaging of power and how planning visualization kind of relate to justice in the city. And I was looking at Cairo as a local yet global case. So it was a local case for the for the global phenomena of planning mediatization and planning visualization in the digital and the mediatized world. This project was actually part of a Leibniz-funded project at TU Berlin, and it was an interdisciplinary project between urban studies and media studies. And my focus was on planning visualizations and visualization, imagination, and imaging of power in the context of Egypt and Cairo. I started from this point and departing point, and I was very much fascinated by the way that the popular media image of the city hardly represent the majority of citizens' everyday experiences and perceptions of their future. And accordingly, I was seeing that this misrepresentation on one side creates a visibility and invisibility for the city, which is not only among the general public, but also the urban planners who get enrolled in the process of producing these very exclusive images of the cities. And on the other side, that it affects and facilitates marginalization as well as social and spatial injustices and the further exclusion of vulnerable groups in the society. In Egypt, it was even a more fascinating observation for me, since the vulnerable population and the vulnerable groups in the society form actually the majority of the population. And accordingly, I was starting to go in the direction of coining this as a term for visual and spatial injustice. Later, it became spatial visual injustice. This is an example of the planning visualizations I was trying to look at. I had a cumulative dissertation. So my project was consisting of 5 research papers, and in each paper I looked at a specific planning visualizations within the context of Cairo, which shows this discrepancy between the visual urban visions and the invisible urban challenges. And I was looking at, for example, street billboards, TV advertisings on real estate, and press news on the real estate. I was basically interested in the intersection of planning visualizations and the part in media studies in relation to the digitalization and transformation of urban planning in the mediatized world, and on the other side, on the movements towards spatial justice in cities. And I was interested to look at how and why planning visualizations become accordingly a question of justice. So to give you an overview, I worked on the 5 papers, but each paper for me represented a unique communicative planning situations in which urban planners among themselves communicate on an urban vision, or urban planners communicate with the general public. So to give you an example, I looked at the planning curriculum and which city is made visible in planning education for planning students, my first paper, and then I moved to the planning professionals of the planning practice to see which city is made visible in planning practice, which I called a professionality. And then I moved further to the politics and the urban visions shared by the state, and then moved to the street to look at which city is made visible to those who use private and public transportation. And then I moved on with the real estate advertisements in the TV. So my analysis was primarily through 3 levels of analysis, and very briefly, I tried to move from the empirical papers. The papers for me formed an empirical ground to a more theoretical contribution. And this is one of the reasons, because I noticed that there is an unrepresented knowledge production in, of course, the global South, but I still situate Cairo in my thesis as a local yet global case, not only a global South case or an Arab region case. So my main conclusion from the dissertation, as like the cumulative analysis of the paper, was that there is a perpetuation for exclusivity, which accordingly co-constructs spatial visual injustice in the different planning fields. And accordingly, I proposed a theory of spatial visual injustice, which very briefly speaks about who and what is made visible by whom, how, and why. I look forward to stay in touch with you, and yeah, thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Manuel. It was really interesting to hear more about your work. I'm sure people will follow up in the chat and possibly grab you afterwards. Okay, so I believe we are now on to our second set of awards. These are our new, the IVSA's new Anti-Colonialism and Anti-Racism Awards, established just this year. So we are delighted to announce that the award for Progressive Advocacy and Visual Research 2021 goes to Tara Pixley from Loyola Marymount University, USA. Tara's work demonstrates a sustained commitment to advocacy within both visual research and visual journalism. Amongst many other activities, she's co-founder and board member of Authority Collective, an organization created in 2017 to resource women of color visual media makers and to intervene in the gatekeeping networks of power within visual media industries. In her work as a visual journalist, visual ethnographer, and multimedia curator, Tara adopts creative strategies to anti-racist work, using visuals to reimagine marginalized individuals and communities. The committee was impressed by Tara's wide range of creative efforts to support work that is inclusive and anti-racist, including industry activism as part of community advocacy for marginalized media makers, research, scholarship, and pedagogy underscoring decolonizing visual practices, and practice regarding the representation of marginality as a photographer, filmmaker, and curator. Tara's work reflects both a serious commitment and a remarkable record of collaboration and activism. Congratulations, Tara.
Thank you so much, and thank you everyone for being here with us today. It's really incredible and such a privilege to share space with so much wonderful work and so many brilliant scholars. So I had actually prepared a little thing to explain the work that I do, but that was so excellently done. Thank you, Susan. So I am both a scholar of visual media and a practicing visual journalist, and I've combined those two spaces within which I work to become an advocate for anti-racist and decolonial work within the visual media industries. And while I'm typically looking at visual journalism or photojournalism more specifically, I find that that work expands into various other spaces across visual media industries. I also frequently look at Instagram and Twitter and how social media spaces and networks can be a haven for both kind of wonderful community building and also for unfortunate moments of the sort of ongoing racist and sexist, misogynist roots of the visual journalism industry. So trying to understand the possibility and power of social media and kind of community networking as a tool to work against and for decolonial efforts. And so as I said, I combine all of those experiences, expertise, and scholarly interests to progress both the visual journalism industry and the study of visual journalism toward a better understanding of its colonial roots, but most importantly for me, the possibility of a decolonial future. And that looks like understanding both the aesthetics and the ethics that have pulled from a racist and colonial framework to understand what that decolonial and anti-racist framework could be. And in these efforts, I work closely with Authority Collective, that organization that Susan introduced briefly, an organization that seeks to empower marginalized artists with resources and community and takes action against systemic and individual abuses in the world of lens-based editorial, documentary, and commercial visual media. And I'm going to share my screen now to give a little bit of not a fancy PowerPoint today, but I wanted to show a little bit of what Authority Collective does and give some context here. What I'm showing you is the Guide to Inclusive Photography. And this, working with AC, with Authority Collective, I edited this Guide to Inclusive Photography where I brought 5 women and non-binary photographers of color from around the world to speak to their knowledges and lived experiences as they offered essays on how to visually document a variety of often marginalized communities, LGBTQ plus communities, indigenous communities, the global south, and these other spaces that have often borne the brunt of photography's extractive practices. So this guide has been downloaded nearly 10,000 times globally, and it was a collaborative project with Photo Shelter, which is a very respected photography industry organization. And a work like this, I point to this because I think it's incredibly important to both do the work of networking and bringing together, building community amongst marginalized photographers, but to also produce the interventions into the industry practices itself. I think it's not enough to kind of insist that we have a seat at the table. It's actually really important to educate the industry, the institutions themselves, and to insist on these changes in the practices at various levels. And another example of that work is the Photo Bill of Rights, which I'll also show you here. And the Photo Bill of Rights was convened by Authority Collective and alongside 9 or 8 other kind of affinity identity focused organizations working in photography. And it was 17 authors that came together in March of 2020 in light of the dangers and struggles that photojournalists were experiencing under COVID at the time. And the Bill of Rights, the Photo Bill of Rights, provides a framework that seeks to build a more inclusive and equitable visual media industry across the board. It also, through toolkits, programming, and resources, seeks to empower individuals and institutions to leverage their relative power and reimagine healthier relationships among one another and with the publics that photographers serve. And one of the ways that I think this evidence is, I'll just scroll kind of quickly through this. It's a ton of text. It's all kind of introducing the concept of, or the various concepts around the issues that photojournalism has faced. And you see here at the bottom, it says, for further context, please see the findings of the Visual Storyteller Survey of 700 plus lens-based workers. And that's what I want to kind of focus on here. This is emblematic of the work that I do, combining research and advocacy by surveying professional visual journalists to understand their experiences and derive data that informs industry practices. With the Bill of Rights Project, we surveyed 712 photographers and photo editors, which allowed us to sort of recognize the financial and health precarities faced, especially by photographers of color and women in the visual journalism profession. And this data made it possible to argue for different approaches to payment terms for photojournalists, more support for photographer parents, and recognition of various other previously ignored aspects of the industry that pushed out marginalized photographers. And you can see here, we're looking at impacts of race, impacts along gender, and trying to understand how those identity spaces are actually marginalized within the profession itself. So the other thing that the Photo Bill of Rights did is look at the importance of informed consent. And this was an issue that came up as well with Authority Collective, where we wrote the Do No Harm statement. And that came out of the conversations happening during the racial justice protest movement of 2020, where many people in the public were requesting that photographers I'll stop sharing, that photographers recognize the potential negative impacts of having protesters' faces circulated widely on the internet via Instagram and other social media networks. And what was being asked of photographers was not just to recognize the power and impact of their images, but to try and understand how photographing protesters in certain situations or doing, performing certain actions could be used against them in a court of law legally. And what happened was this sort of the schism amongst photojournalists and I would say the public and younger photojournalists or folks who are really thinking about the importance of a decolonial ethical framework is that this idea of informed consent, where one is speaking to those you're photographing, is making sure that there's an understanding that you're being photographed, that the images will be used in particular ways. Many people in the American visual journalism industry were loath to recognize the necessity of informed consent. They instead stood on, the right that we have in America that is not a right shared internationally, the right we have here to photograph in public spaces without consent, without permission. So one of the things that the Photo Bill of Rights has continued to argue for, and that Authority Collective has also continued to work toward, is what a visual ethics, what a contemporary visual ethical approach looks like, where we take into consideration the impact that photography has, especially on marginalized communities. And informed consent, the idea of minimizing harm, is central to that work. And so this work it's ongoing. It's very complex, working across kind of pulling together scholarship and advocacy and the lived experiences and sort of on the ground daily work lives of photojournalists. But I think that it is proving to be quite productive to bring these different spaces together, to use data and research to speak to how we need a decolonial ethic and aesthetic in the visual media industries and specifically in photojournalism. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Tara. I wish you'd been with us yesterday. We had an ethics think tank. I think it would have been, yeah, excellent conversation enhanced by your presence. Maybe next year you could join us for that. Okay, we are on to our final award, which is the 2021 Award for Visual Activism. This goes to Annalisa Frisina from the University of Padova in Italy. Annalisa's participatory video, Decolonizing the City, Visual Dialogues in Padova, represents a public visual sociological approach to confronting and reflecting on Italy's colonial past by building counter-histories coming from racialized people with family migratory backgrounds. The committee thought that Annalisa's project was a fascinating multi-dimensional initiative that directly supports anti-colonial ideals through collaboration with immigrant communities to design and conduct walking tours, a film, and workshops, all of which recall through contemporary and popular consciousness different examples of Italy's colonial past. We were impressed with how Annalisa engaged local residents in developing materials and language for restoring the history and abuses of Italy's colonial past in ways that can inform current discussions and policy making. Congratulations, Annalisa.
Thanks. I share the screen. Can you see it? Okay. So first of all, let me thank the International Visual Sociology Association, the board members for this wonderful award. I'm very grateful to Carolina Cambre for nominating my work and to Susan Hansen, all the awards committee for this gift. Antiracism is also a battle for memory. Material traces of colonialism are almost in every city, as you can see. And finally, streets, squares, monuments are giving us the chance to start a public debate on a silenced colonial history. The pioneer has been Resistenza in Cirenaica in Bologna, working since 2015 in Cirenaica neighborhood, making it the center of an ongoing laboratory, including urban walks, reading, storytelling. But the main source of my inspiration comes from Ijaba Shego, Italo-Somali writer and journalist who paved the way to a more public engagement with colonial traits in public space of Rome. In her book, Roma Negata, Percorsi postcoloniali nella città, Ijaba Shego works through Rome, reaching an incredible significant number of places, carrying colonial traces which were forgotten. Co-author Gino Bianchi photographs within the book show people whose origin are from ex-Italian colonies occupying this place with their bodies and claiming an authority to narrate their story. The neighborhood Palestro is important for the work decolonizing the city. In this district of Padova, in northeast Italy, there is a high concentration of roads carrying colonial names, such as Via Riprea, Via Smare, Via Lidia, Via Ambalagi, Via Ambaradan. They are mostly names of colonial battles and war crimes, massacres. And the names of Italian war criminals are celebrated as heroes. This controversial topography became well known to the inhabitants of the city when in June 2020, following Black Lives Matter global sparkle, the neighborhood became the main target of the newborn collective Decolonize Your Eyes. First action aimed at problematizing some of the roads, calling out for a different topography in collaboration with association and local residents. I must say that I'm one of the inhabitants of the district, and I took part in the initiatives of the collective, which chose as its symbol, as you can see here, Kebedesh Seyum, an Ethiopian woman who fought against Italian colonialism. The visual laboratory provided the students an introduction to visual research, as well as insight on decolonialization practice addressing colonial traces in the streets, monuments, institutions. And the course was specifically aimed at introducing the work within the broader frame of anti-racism actions. In the course, we discussed with the student how to decolonize the methods through which we do our research, and we explore particularly visual tools, participatory video, as tool for visual action in the urban space of Padova. During the course, we discussed how to make counter-visuality a fertile terrain for collective reflexivity, and also how to come to terms with white innocence in Italian society. I would especially thank Elisabetta Campagni, master graduate in sociology, who assisted me in the organization of the course, the shootings, and the editing processes with the students. An essential assistance comes also from Dagmawi Mer, a filmmaker of Ethiopian origin, who has been working within the Italian independent cinema industry. Decolonizing the cities starts from urban traces of the colonial past, aiming at exploring its current legacies. And to do so, each of the 6 stories dealt creatively with a different aspect of colonialism, which is relevant in Italian society today. Maybe at the end, I will show you the trailer of the video. Here you see the names of the 6 protagonists. Each of them left something in the road she or he visited. This gift were, for instance, for Wissal, an alternative map of the Mediterranean region and her poetries. For Viviana, a black woman portrait. For Manuel, cardboard left, and Khadija and Ilaria left family photographs. And finally, Magda, a reproduction of the colonial map exposed in the square on which she finally reports M. Césaire quotation. Decolonizing the city constitutes a work whose uniqueness is based on bringing together forms of visual activism from a plurality of actors, joining academic research and social actions, and questioning citizens to come to terms with the white privilege in Italian society. I learned from bell hooks that privilege is not in and of itself bad. What matters is what we do with privilege. It's about collective responsibility, and that's a long-term process. Thus, also decolonizing the city project is in progress. Here you see some shots from the last event of the collective Decolonize Your Eyes, last 20th of June. Thanks to this award, I will continue the work in a broader network, the Federation of Resistances, which includes collectives from many Italian cities. Moreover, there are some little steps to join other collectives in Europe, such as Berlin Postcoloniale or Decolonize Hellas. So thanks again for this encouraging award. So if I can, I show you the trailer. It's just 1 minute and a half long. Can I share it?
If it is just 1 minute, that's great. We've just got Manuel to get back to after your...
Do you see something?
Hajiba, sono figlia di Mohammed e Melika, sono figlia di Mukhtar e Atiqa, sono figlia di tribù della barbaria, del Nord Africa, degli Amazight. Sono figlia della questura, della fatica, sono figlia del dolore, dell'islamfobia, sono figlia di un sangue e un sentimento bastardo che mi tengo dentro.
La mappa coloniale in piazza non è molto conosciuta. Non tutti sanno che quei paesi erano una volta colonie italiane, la Libia, l'Albania, l'Etiopia, l'Eritrea.
E la prima volta che ci sono passata ho chiesto: papà, ma c'è via Somalia qui? E allora dentro di me ho pensato che se qui a Padova avevano intitolato una via alla Somalia, in qualche modo la Somalia aveva dovuto essere importante.
Ricordare e raccontare la storia della mia famiglia attraverso documenti fotografici mi permette di riscoprire le mie origini, che fanno parte di una storia più grande.
Sfortunatamente, e purtroppo, Piazza Antenore è legata anche a un passato oscuro. È stata distrutta nel 1937 per dare luogo a Piazza 9 Maggio.
Dal punto di vista, per esempio, di quello che riguarda delle vie del mio quartiere, penso questi nomi hanno doppia valenza, hanno tutta sempre una contraddizione. Penso, non so, anche a questa parola decolonizzarsi da delle strutture che impediscono una visione, no?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. That was great. And I'm glad we got to that little clip at the end as well to get a sense of the film. Right, so I believe Manuel now has sound. So it would be lovely if he could have a second go, perhaps, at telling us quite briefly, because we've only got 5 minutes left. I'm so sorry, Manuel, but let's try this again. Congratulations, Manuel.
Thank
you
you.
are the 2021 winner of the Prosser Award.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Well, hello, everyone. It is an honor for me to receive this recognition. It means a lot for me, and it is also a good opportunity to expose the issues we work with. So thank you, IVSA, and thanks to my colleague and wife, Annalisa, who is also a visual sociologist, because without her, this would not be possible. I have just returned from Colombia, where I have traveled several times during the last 10 years to do different documentary, sociological, and ethnographic work related to forced displacement. And on this trip to Colombia, I worked with sociologist Maria Fernanda Carrillo and journalist Peter Sherman. We did a dozen interviews with mothers and fathers of young people killed by the police in the farm work of national strike, as well as young people who were shot in the face by the police and therefore lost an eye. This is a systemic practice that had already been used by the police in Chile and is now being used by the Colombian security forces. Let me show you one of them. The use of images was fundamental to our work in Colombia. It is not easy to interview people who have lost what they love most, their children. So the photo elicitation allows us to go deeper into the reconstruction of the life of these young people. And we hope also with these images to be able to contribute in some way to honor their lives. So visual sociology was an important for this work. I started in visual sociology about 15 years ago, and 10 years ago, mostly inspired by the work of Douglas Harper and others, of course. I founded and directed the Multimedia Laboratory for Social Research at the National Autonomous University of Mexico. It was not easy to convince Mexican academia that sociology can also be done with images, but we did it. None of this would have been possible without the hard work that IVSA began many, many years before. First, we created a visual sociology seminar. Then, a visual sociology seminar, then a visual sociology course for undergraduate students, as well as the first book on visual sociology in Mexico. We have also created documentaries and works like the one we are doing right now in Colombia. I want to close my participation by showing one of many testimonies we got during this trip to Colombia. And I want to emphasize that visual sociology has an important tradition, not only of analyzing society, but also denouncing issues that need to be denounced. It is important for the world to know that at this moment in Cali, Bogota, Medellin, and other places in Colombia, many poor young people are being killed, disappeared, or injured by the government. I hope that with the use of visual sociology, documentary film, and journalism, we can inspire people to take action to, and demand not only the Colombian government to stop the aggressions, but also the US government to stop the economic support used for the police who kill young people. Muchas gracias, IVSA. And if I have time, I'll leave you with this short video.
Aproximadamente 6 metros, 5 metros me disparó el policía del ESMAD. Y pues fue un impacto muy doloroso. Al salir de mi labor, pues en dirección hacia mi hogar, habían unas manifestaciones.
La cara, le dispararon a la cara a un manifestante.
Pues al acercarme un poco más para poder ver si podría llegar al lugar donde se coge el transporte, por así decirlo, pues fui agredido por el ESMAD. En la confrontación, pues el ESMAD disparó y me impactó en la cara, en el rostro, haciendo pérdida de mi ojo y ocasionándome varias fracturas en la cara, alrededor de 13 fracturas en esta zona de la cara.
¡Ay! ¡Ay!
Hay alrededor de 60 casos documentados en los últimos 2 meses en Colombia, donde los jóvenes han perdido uno de sus ojos o sus rostros han sido desfigurados por el mal uso de armas de menor letalidad. Esto es una situación que busca un mensaje muy poderoso y es el de que cuando los jóvenes abren los ojos debemos sacárselos. Cuando los jóvenes protestan y ven más allá de la cotidianidad, deben ser reprimidos. Su visión debe ser acortada, su visión debe ser tapada. Debido a las múltiples denuncias de organizaciones de derechos humanos, la Corte Suprema de Justicia emitió un fallo muy importante donde le prohíbe, entre varias de las decisiones que emitió, le prohíbe a la fuerza pública utilizar unas escopetas calibre 12 que venían utilizando previamente. No obstante, siguieron utilizando otro tipo de armas de supuesta menor letalidad, donde utilizan balas de goma que deben ser pues debidamente utilizadas. Se disparan de la cintura hacia abajo.
Hay enfrentamientos con el ESMAD, ataques del ESMAD, porque el ESMAD utiliza más de 6 tipos de armas para enfrentarse a piedras y a escudos y a nuestros cuerpos.
Estas armas, cuando se disparan a la cara de una persona, pues básicamente va a generar lesiones que pueden terminar en la pérdida de los ojos o que pueden terminar en una fractura, sobre todo cuando los disparos son a corta distancia.
Es difícil vivir sin un ojo, es complicado. Es como saber que no se puede hacer nada más. Es una impotencia, es un sentimiento vacío, saber que no se puede recuperar algo. No voy a tener la misma capacidad, los mismos reflejos, la misma visión. Me gustaría que pararan, no continuaran con estas agresiones, no continuaran con esta fuerza desmedida de la fuerza pública, que dejen de atacar a los jóvenes, que dejen de hacernos este daño.
Thank you.
Wow, thank you, Manuel. That's really Very powerful work. Thanks for sharing it with us. Okay, we probably all need a little break now. So thank you to all of our award recipients for coming along and telling us about their work. And we hope to see you at future IVSA conferences and to